Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show where we slice through a mountain of information to bring you the most potent, actionable insights. Ever felt like you're speaking, but a perfect word just won't quite come to mind? Or maybe you're reading something really fascinating, only for, unfamiliar terms to trip you up. Today, we're not just learning words, we're delving into how you can build your linguistic superpower, equipping you with the precise language to articulate your thoughts with, well, clarity and confidence. Okay, let's unpack this. So we're embarking on a deep dive into mastering vocabulary. And look, it's not just for those actively learning a new language. It's a critical skill for basically anyone looking to communicate more effectively and understand the world around them more deeply. Our mission today, to cut through all the noise and give you, the listener, a clear, actionable roadmap for building a robust vocabulary, day by day, in a way that actually sticks. We've pulled insights from this really comprehensive guide called Mastering Vocabulary, a daily approach. And it's just packed with practical strategies for, sustained growth.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is just how foundational vocabulary truly is. I mean, the guide really emphasizes this. Vocabulary isn't merely a skill, it's the absolute bedrock for all other language proficiencies. Think of words as the essential building blocks of any language, right? The more diverse and sturdy those bricks are, and the better you know how to assemble them, the more freely and precisely you can speak, read, and understand. This directly impacts your ability to express complex thoughts, to really comprehend nuanced written text, and to grasp all those subtle shades of meaning that make communication so rich, so impactful. Without a strong vocabulary, it's like trying to build a mansion with only a handful of mismatched bricks. All other language skills will inevitably struggle.
That analogy, the words as building blocks, that really underscores their foundational role, doesn't it? And to continue that construction idea, we're not just talking about laying a few bricks here, we're talking about building an entire linguistic skyscraper. But the guide reveals something really fundamental about how we truly build this linguistic strength. It introduces a concept called the daily vocabulary building cycle. And this isn't just a collection of tips, right? It's a dynamic, cyclical process designed for continuous growth, for momentum. Here's where it gets really interesting.
Precisely. Our source illustrates this as a continuous loop. Each step feeds into and reinforces the others. And that cyclical nature, that's key because it means you're not simply acquiring isolated words. You're establishing a sustainable system. As you cycle from, say, encountering new words to actively reviewing them, then confidently using them and keeping track, you're constantly circling back, strengthening those neural pathways. This leads to much better retention and, crucially, real-world application. It's about cultivating a consistent habit that compounds over time, makes learning feel less like a chore, more like natural growth.
Okay, all right, let's peel back the layers of this powerful cycle then. Let's dive into its individual components. Our guide lays out 6 key steps for building vocabulary that are both practical and backed by how our brains actually learn. Let's kick off with the first one. The initial step is, well, it's brilliantly simple, but it taps into a core principle of cognitive science. Learn 5 to 10 new words every day. It's all about how our brains work best, Small, focused chunks are just more digestible, more memorable than trying to swallow it all at once, trying to cram, say, 100 words in one sitting. That often leads to frustration and, frankly, rapid forgetting. It's the small, consistent efforts that become the real engine of progress here.
Absolutely. And our source provides excellent, actionable guidance on how to choose those words. That's often where people get stuck, right? It highlights 3 effective strategies. First, leverage thematic lists. And think beyond basic categories, maybe go for culinary terms or expressions of joy or specific professional jargon. Second, prioritize words you'll actually use in your daily life, in your specific conversations, maybe in your field of work. And third, cultivate the habit of actively noting down unfamiliar words you encounter organically, while reading an insightful article, watching a documentary, maybe even listening to a discussion like this one. So for example, instead of just basic food words, maybe focus on words like savor, gourmet, bland, palatable, culinary, or nourish, something more specific. Or for emotions, you could consider melancholy, ebullient, languid, exhilarated, apathetic, words with nuance. And here's the truly powerful tip from our guide. Even consistently adding just 5 words daily. That translates to an astonishing 150 new words a month, and over a year. That's a remarkable 1,800 words. That's a significant cumulative vocabulary upgrade, all without ever feeling overwhelmed.
1,800 words a year. Wow. That really puts the compounding power of consistency into perspective, doesn't it? And that strategic approach to picking words brings us directly to the second step. Group words by theme. This isn't just a suggestion. The guide calls it a massive memory accelerator. Because our brains, they're wired to connect related ideas. Themes provide that essential framework, right, for building a robust mental network rather than just a random collection of isolated facts.
Precisely. Our source material on memory enhancement directly supports this. It emphasizes how connecting ideas, exploring categories, even creating mental maps. These are crucial for aiding recall. When you group words, you're not just memorizing lists, you're building a structured mental filing system. It makes sense. Our source suggests starting with themes that resonate with your life or interests. For instance, instead of just general food, maybe words like saute, braise, marinade, garnish, infuse. For emotions, perhaps serene, vexed, euphoric, pensive, disgruntled. If you're into technology, you might group algorithm, interface, bandwidth, cybersecurity, protocol, or travel. That could include itinerary, trek, destination, expedition, souvenir. Organizing your words this way just makes them much stickier, much more accessible for active use later on.
Speaking of stickiness, the third step is a classic for a reason. Use flashcards, especially with spaced repetition. Many of you listening might already be familiar with powerful apps like Anki or Quizlet. And there's a compelling scientific reason they work so well.
Yeah, this is where the science really backs up the method. These flashcard apps, they leverage spaced repetition. It's like having a smart memory coach built in. Instead of just reviewing words randomly, the app intelligently schedules them. It serves them up to you just as your brain is kind of on the verge of forgetting them. This scientifically proven technique helps you remember information better and for significantly longer periods. It's really effective. The process itself is pretty straightforward. You create a digital flashcard for each word. So the front might display the word, let's say, ebient. Then the back holds its definition, overflowing with enthusiasm, high-spirited, plus an example sentence you create like, her ebullient personality lit up the room. The critical part is reviewing them daily. Often the apps will prompt you with notifications. And here's a bonus tip from our sources. Enhance your flashcards. Add relevant images, maybe even audio recordings of the word's pronunciation or its use in a sentence. This multisensory input significantly enhances memorability. Makes those words even harder to forget because you're engaging more of your brain in the process.
That's brilliant. Engaging more senses totally makes sense for memory. Now, building on that foundation, our guide points to what it calls the linchpin of this whole process, the moment a word truly becomes yours. And that's step 4. Make your own example sentences. This is where the word actually locks into your memory, moving from just passive recognition to active recall.
Yes. If we connect this to the bigger picture, this step is absolutely crucial for transitioning words, moving them from your passive vocabulary, you know those words you recognize when you read or hear them but don't confidently use yourself, into your active vocabulary, meaning you can readily employ them in your own speech and writing. Our source powerfully illustrates this bridge. When you take the time to write your own personal sentences, it's an active recall and verbalization. It's not just rote memorization, it's practical application. For instance, if your new word is serene, don't just remember the definition. Use it. Use it in a sentence that's personal and relevant to you, like, after a long week, I found a serene moment by the lake. This single, focused act, it yields multiple benefits, sharpens your grammar, helps you master sentence construction, and significantly boosts your overall speaking fluency because you've actually practiced the word in context.
Building on that, the 5th step might seem a bit old school in our, well, increasingly digital world, but it holds a secret power for memory. Keep a vocabulary notebook. While apps are fantastic for spaced repetition, there's something uniquely effective about the physical act of handwriting for improving memory. It just engages different parts of your brain.
Indeed. Our guide on memory enhancement through handwriting clearly lays out the benefits. It's not just about putting pen to paper, though. It's about organizing that information, organizing it in a structured way that further cements it in your mind. Our sources recommend splitting your notebook into those thematic sections we discussed earlier. Date your pages. That way you can track your progress and visually see how far you've come. It's motivating. And crucially, leave ample space. Space to revise later, maybe after a week or a month. This physical, active engagement with the words, rather than just passively scrolling on a screen, it creates a stronger, more lasting memory trace. A powerful sample layout could be columns for word, then meaning synonym, and finally, personal sentence. So for ebullient, joyful, lively, his ebullient spirit was contagious. Or culinary, related to cooking, she's pursuing a culinary career. It becomes this personalized dictionary tailored to your own learning journey.
I love that. The tactile experience of writing, it really does seem to make a difference. Grounds the words in a different way. And speaking of revision, that leads us directly to the 6th and final key step, which is absolutely non-negotiable for long-term retention. Review regularly and speak new words out loud. Learning isn't truly complete until you revise and actively use what you've learned. It's easy to forget that part.
Definitely. This is where active recall truly shines and becomes your most powerful tool. Our source material visually demonstrates this progression from unreviewed vocabulary, which is easily forgotten, right, to mastered vocabulary, which is retained and readily accessible for confident use. The process involves weekly self-testing. You challenge yourself to recall the word just from its meaning or maybe its context, then actively speak or write those words again. Perhaps use them in a conversation or write a short journal entry incorporating them. This consistent practice of actively retrieving information builds robust long-term memory pathways. And here's another bonus tip from our guide. It's deceptively simple, but incredibly effective. Every single time you learn a new word, say it out loud, 3 to 5 times. Use it immediately in a sentence that feels natural to you. You could even record yourself speaking it and then listen back. This verbal and auditory reinforcement is just incredibly powerful for cementing words into your active vocabulary.
Okay, so we've walked through the entire daily vocabulary building cycle. A structured, compounding approach. Seems really solid. Now, let's be realistic about this strategy. It's undeniably effective, but it's important to look at the practicalities, including the pros and cons highlighted in our sources.
Absolutely. Our guide clearly outlines the pros. First, it naturally cultivates a daily habit, which is just immensely powerful for any skill, not just language learning. Second, it leads to far better retention. Because of those scientifically backed methods we just discussed, like spaced repetition and active recall, and crucially, because it's about small, manageable steps, it effectively prevents burnout. That makes it a sustainable practice over the long haul.
Right. But on the con side, it's easy for some people to look at this and think, wow, that sounds like a significant time commitment, even if it's daily. Or they might perceive the progress as, well, slow compared to maybe some crash courses or intensive programs out there.
That's a very common initial perception, and it's a valid point to raise. However, our sources offer a vital counterpoint, a final tip that directly addresses these concerns. It says, consistency beats intensity. Even just 5 minutes every day is better than 1 hour once a week. This isn't about rapid, fleeting gains, you see. It's about building a robust, resilient vocabulary that truly integrates into your communication. The progress might feel gradual day to day, sure, but the cumulative effect is staggering, and that makes the approach sustainable and ultimately far more rewarding than any intensive, short-lived effort that often just leads to frustration and people giving up. It's really the difference between trying to memorize a list for a test and truly knowing a word, being able to use it confidently.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Well, we've taken a deep dive into mastering vocabulary. What's abundantly clear is that it isn't about grand gestures or frustrating cramming sessions. It's about consistent, small daily efforts. It's about building a sustainable cycle, not just wanting a temporary list that you'll forget next week.
Exactly. And here's maybe a final thought to mull over. What if dedicating just 5 minutes a day, just 5 minutes, to one of these simple, effective methods could make a real difference? Whether it's using flashcards to proactively review or making your own personal sentences, or even just jotting down words in a dedicated notebook, what if that small daily action could unlock not only a new level of language proficiency, but also a newfound confidence? Confidence in how you communicate and understand the world around you. And this applies whether you're learning English as a new language or just trying to refine the skills you already have. So maybe pick one step from this deep dive. Just one, and try integrating it into your routine this week. You might be genuinely surprised at the profound compounding power of those few consistent minutes.